لا إله إلا الله.
والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن استنى بسنته إلى يوم الدين. All praise is due to Allah, and may Allah's peace and blessings be on the last messenger of Allah and on all those who follow the path of righteousness until the last day. My topic, as you have already heard, is feminism from an Islamic perspective, or Islam and feminism. And this term, feminism, we hear regularly in the newspapers, on television, in the media, magazines, etc. It has become one of the hot topics of our time. It's a topic which came up in the 20th century, and it has carried on into the 21st century. And it's a topic which represents, in the hands of some, an attack on Islam, or the basis from which Islam would be attacked. However, feminism in its origin was not against Islamic teachings. It is what feminism has become in our times, where we find it challenging and seeking to displace Islamic teachings in the Muslim Ummah, the female element of the Muslim Ummah. So, for us to understand this topic, let me first give you a definition. The definition found commonly is that feminism is the belief in the social, economic, and political equality of the sexes. The social, economic, and political equality of the sexes. This is the essence of what women, Western women in particular, were fighting for the last 300 to 500 years. The social equality, which had to do with family and how family operated. Economic, which had to do in the workplace, wages, and equality of pay for equality of work. And in the political sphere, it was focused on voting, because up until 1920, in the US, there wasn't an opportunity for most Americans or American females to vote. Voting was the right only of males. But by 1920, 1918 in the UK, women were given the right to vote. And with that right, they progressed with the civil rights issues of the 20th century, where Black Americans sought their rights, which were supposed to have been given to them, and the women's movements, women's rights movements, they followed up behind the civil rights movements in the US. Now, when we look at the issues of feminism, we have to understand that feminism in the West is quite different from what many of you might think feminism is as Muslims. Because the background, the history which produced feminism in the West is different from the background for Muslims. Because if we consider that 1,400 years ago, in the 7th century, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam had stated in his farewell address, Khutbatul Wida', he had said there in that khutbah, Ya ayyuhan nas, ala inna rabbakum wahid. O people, your Lord is one. Wa inna abakum wahid. And your father is one. Ala la fadla li Arabiyyin ala a'jamiyyin. By Allah, there is no superiority of an Arab over a non-Arab. Wala li'ajamiyyin ala Arabiyyin, or for a non-Arab over an Arab. Wala li'ahmarin or ahmara ala aswada. And there is none for whites over blacks. Wala li aswada ala ahmar, nor for blacks over whites. Illa bittaqwa, except based on the fear of Allah. This statement 1,400 years ago is a statement of civil rights, a statement of equality, which was only reached by Western civilization in the 19th and 20th centuries. So we have a different background. Our laws are divinely revealed laws, revealed by the creator of this world and everything in it. Their laws, while initially based on the Bible, and the Bible is corrupted, it is not the pure revelation from Allah, so it has in it many, many statements which go against the teachings of God. But it does have a moral core which is preserved in Islam in its purity. So with that corruption, then it was not surprising that in the West, slavery was promoted. People of color were looked at as inferior to Europeans. And even in the most highly regarded document of America's existence, the American Constitution, in it, and this is written in the 18th century by the leading thinkers, the most enlightened leaders who put together this document known as the American Constitution. In it, in Article 1, Section 2, called the 3/5 Compromise, It enshrines there the concept that people of color, black people, were equivalent to 3/5 of a white person. This is in the American Constitution. This is in the 18th century. And this was not repealed in the full sense until the 1960s with the Civil Rights Movement, when finally laws were made to ensure no discrimination over race, and added to that was also no discrimination for the sexes. So there's a different background here. Because the laws in Islam were revealed by God, those laws will not be evolving. They will not need to be changed. Not to say that in some parts of the Muslim world where culture has overcome the teachings of Islam, that women may not have to fight for rights which were already given to them in Islam. So this is the perspective we are talking about. The rights which Western women fought over in the early 20th century, like owning property, this was already established in the Quran and the Sunnah 1,400 years ago. That khutbah or speech which Prophet Muhammad ﷺ gave as his farewell speech 1,400 years ago, you will not find in any civilization from the 7th century all the way up until the 20th century where a clear statement of equality and opposition to nationalism and tribalism is there. You will not find it. No matter how hard you search in all of the European countries, countries of the Far East, Near East, it's not there. And the reason why it was there at a time when nowhere else in the world was this said is because it is revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why it could be found 1,400 years ago when nobody in the rest of the world was thinking about this. It was not comprehensible. People were caught up in tribalism, in racialism, nationalism, etc., etc. So when we look at the issues of feminism, we have to look at them from this perspective, that Islam has already given us the foundations for women's rights. They're all there. Women's rights which benefit them, they're all there. There are some rights which Western feminism has introduced which are anti-family, which are really anti-femininity, which promote lesbianism and other deviant behaviors and practices. This has become chartered in the UN. In their women's conferences, these are being promoted. So when we look at the mainstream feminism from the West, most of what is sought by them is supported by Islam. Equal Pay Act in 1963, they passed that. Islam is all for that. Whether it's males amongst males, white and black, or males and females, if both have done the same work, they deserve to get the same pay. So this is quite legitimate. Also, restricting jobs in the West, women were not allowed into certain professions. So Islam, that door is open. They are not restricted from where and when and how they would work in the society. If it's beneficial to the society, Islam is in favor of it. It doesn't oppose women entering into various fields of work, which may be even well known or commonly held by males. Islam doesn't say simply because males are normally in these fields, you can't. What you find is that it was not until the 1965 Race Relations Act that followed also by the Civil Rights Act that women were now given the opportunity to take jobs as airplane pilots, in construction workers, soldiers, bankers, bus drivers. They could take all these jobs. This was a revolution in the 60s. But really, Islam never prohibited women from taking these professions. The bus drivers, you might say, but what about Saudi Arabia? Women are not allowed to drive there. Well, you know that some changes have taken place recently. But that's not Islam's ruling on women driving. That's just Saudi Arabian culture. That's all that is, Saudi Arabian culture. It's not Islamic culture, Islamic law. And how you know in general what is Islamic law and what is Islamic culture is that culture is found in some places and not found in others. Whereas law is going to be everywhere. Like praying 5 times a day, it's everywhere in the Muslim world. We don't have any country which says pray 3 times a day. Fasting in Ramadan is law. Everywhere you go in the Muslim world, Muslims fast. They fast in the month of Ramadan. They fast for 30 days or 29 days. Nowhere do you find them fasting in Sha'ban instead of Ramadan. Nowhere. So you know this is Islam. But when you find things in one place, practice, for example, here in Nigeria, but you go elsewhere, you don't find it, then this is one of the signs that this is cultural. It's cultural. It's not really from Islam. So, important for us to understand the distinction between the two. So, as I said, much of what the early feminist movement in the West sought, Islam had either already provided or the opportunity to find it was there in Islam. So when we look into certain practices, for example, we said the right to own property. Women in Islam had the right to own property 1,400 years ago. The right to education, which is one of the things that the feminist movement fought for in the 19th century. The right to education. We know that Aisha radiallahu anha was one of the leading teachers after and in the time of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We know that. Herself and Salama, they taught the generation to come the deen. Maybe 1/4 of the Sharia was taught by them. So they had that position 1,400 years ago, no problem. Whereas in the West, women were denied education. They were not allowed to go and study. Back in the Middle Ages, they were even debating whether women had souls. Whether women had souls. Because they were generally holding the opinion that women were just created for the pleasure of men. And even the most enlightened thinkers of the Renaissance period and the Enlightenment period, they made horrendous statements about women. That they're frivolous, they're silly, they're not to be consulted, like these kinds of statements. So that's the tradition that feminism in the West is coming out of. Actually, even during the 18th century into the 19th century, early 19th century, in Germany, men had the right to sell their wives. In Germany, men had the right to sell their wives to somebody else. I mean, this is something unthinkable in Islam, that a man would have the right to sell his wife to somebody else. But that's what existed. And that's the view that they had of women. So you can understand that as women woke up in the West with the various civil rights movements that were developing in France, in Germany and England, etc., that they sought for those rights. They fought for those rights. So, as I said, what we have to keep in mind is when we look at issues, feminist issues, we have to keep in mind that our background is different from theirs. And when the countries of Europe and the West became secular countries, secular democratic countries, then even the moral principles which govern the society were lost. The moral principles which govern the society were lost because morality now was decided by the majority. Morality was decided by the majority of the citizens. So what was forbidden, considered evil, etc., 10 years before, 50 years before, what was now considered good and fine. And what was considered good and fine before was now considered evil. And that's how the situation changes in the West. So you will find new issues coming in the feminist movement which go against the understandings of the early feminists of the 20th century. So just as an example, we can look at the issue of what is called marital rape. Marital rape. In the 90s, 1993, it was made a crime punishable with jail in the US. And it spread across a number of countries in the world. Marital rape. Now, the reality is that according to Sharia, there is no such thing. There is no such thing as marital rape. Because when a husband and wife marry in Islam, there are rights which have been specified for the male and rights which have been specified for the female. And amongst the rights of the male is that if he calls his wife to have relations with him, she's supposed to come. And she marries under that basis. So the idea that she is going to say no and he forces himself on her, and that now becomes a crime punishable with 12 years in jail. 12 years in jail. We can say, well, maybe, he shouldn't have forced himself. If the force is coercion, non-physical, then still, should he be charged? If it's physical, he has beat her up, he broke an arm or whatever, okay, we have an issue. This is now violence. And the punishment is not for marital rape, but for violence, for harming his wife. That's the point in Islamic law. But not rape in marriage. And in fact, though the West has taken it on and now it's become quite a standard, some of the biggest countries in the world, China, there is no marital rape. India, there's no marital rape. Here, Nigeria, there's no marital rape. Biggest country here in Africa. Second biggest, Ethiopia, Muslim population-wise, general population-wise. No marital rape. And a number of other countries around the world. Indonesia, 300 million people, no marital rape. So this is something limited to a particular part of the world, with their view in terms of the male-female relationship. So what has happened is that feminism went from practical, institutional efforts to ensure women their fair, just, and equal rights into areas now which went beyond the boundaries of what was just, fair, and just. It now shifted into radical feminism, which identified men as being the enemy. They talk about the patriarchal society, that the only way women are going to be truly free is if they divorce themselves from men. Practically. Especially now with technology, women can have a baby without the direct intervention of a man. They have sperm banks where you just make the arrangements, you get it, and you can have a child. So they say we don't need men. Of course, they still need the men to provide the sperm. So it's not that you don't need men, right? But the point is that even marriage now was being looked at as being a place of oppression of women. Because the idea that the man, is the head of the family and all this, no. They looked at that as being oppression. So they have launched an attack on the family itself. And this is what has now dominated the women's conferences that are connected with the UN, etc. The American and European feminists, they have dominated the discussion. Their main focus is on FGM, female genital mutilation, the veil, hijab. We need to liberate our third world sisters from the oppression of male-dominated society. So that is their view. While women from the third world are concerned about things, practical things connect in their countries which have to do with national debt and health care and all these other kinds of things, their main concern is contraception, sterility, sterilizing the third world women so they don't have too many babies. You know, they say too many babies is affecting your economy, etc. So we need to cut down the number of babies. Oh, so that the resources, last. So that the West can continue to benefit from those resources. So this is their approach. This is their focus. This is their idea. So we have to be very careful when we connect ourselves with the feminist movement from the West. What most of the various groups are calling for go against the teachings of Islam. Now, there are a number of issues. I have listed about 17 of them, which represent the areas where the West, being led by Western feminists, attack on Islam. The time doesn't permit me to go into all of them. I can list them here. Polygamy, which was talked about earlier by my brother. Arranged marriages, which are forced marriages. Guardianship, wilaya. Do you have to have a wali when you get married? And this. Child marriages, what they call child marriages. Marrying non-Muslims. This is all women's issues. Divorce, it's easy. Man's right, he has the right. Women don't seem to have the right. Marital rape that we spoke about, as well as issues of alimony, abortion, contraception, the veil, inheritance, two witnesses, separate education. These are all topics which the West attack the Muslim world on in the name of feminism. What I would suggest to you, because time doesn't permit me to tackle all of these, what I would suggest to you is that these have been tackled already in a course called Contemporary Issues, which is available at my university website, Islamic Online University. This course in the free diploma, it doesn't cost you anything. Go there and take this course. They give you a certificate at the end of the course. These issues, which are hot issues of our time, which have to do with you as women, please take this course, take the benefit from it. It will help you in dealing with these various issues which are being raised constantly in the media, etc., in the name of feminism. So, inshallah, this presentation, Islam and Feminism, is really about distinguishing between what we may call Islamic feminism and Muslim feminism, cultural Muslim feminism. Islamic feminism is where a Muslim woman who knows her rights in Islam insists on her rights to get those rights, where those rights are not being given as they should. For example, female divorce, khula. Khula, where a woman has the right to initiate divorce. In most Muslim countries, it's very difficult, even though it may be on the law books, because it's in all of the schools of law, Islamic law, Sharia, the madhabs. It's there in every one of them. But because of decisions made at a point in history where the scholarship, Islamic scholarship, was at its low, this right to a large degree is denied Muslim women today. If they try to get it, it's so much going around and here, there, up, down, left, right, put this paper in, get that stamped, and all kinds of things till the end. You say, it's not even worth it. This is unfortunate. Because in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, when a woman came to the Prophet ﷺ and said, listen, I want to divorce my husband. And people say, well, you have to have a good reason. She said, I don't like him. In fact, I find him ugly. Okay? I find him to be the ugliest of men. And it is affecting my iman. The Prophet ﷺ informed the man, and the divorce took place by khula. Of course, he asked her, are you ready to give back the dowry which he gave you, the mahar? She said, I'll give him back double. He said, no need. It's okay, just give him back what he gave you. Right? So this is a right which women have the right to push for, that divorce should be initiated or initiatable from women. It should not only be in the hand of the man. And most women don't know that it's also possible in your marriage contract to put it as a condition that I have the similar right to divorce as my husband. So even without going the khula route, you can pronounce divorce as the husband pronounces divorce. You can seek it in your contract. Most women don't know this. What? Really? Yeah. Inshallah. So this is a part of Islamic law, but people are not informed that, so you don't know. So you are put in the position, in many cases where it is extremely difficult for you to get out of, marriages which are harmful, even harmful to yourself. So Islamic feminism stays within the bounds of the Sharia. It doesn't seek what is contradictory or violating those principles. So if a woman, for example, she can't conceive in her own womb, in the West, it's possible for her to either combine ovum from her womb, from her fallopian tubes, combined with the sperm of her husband or the sperm of anybody else from a sperm bank, and that combination put in the womb of another woman who becomes a surrogate mother, and she has a child. From the Islamic perspective, this is not permissible. The only in vitro fertilization, IVF, acceptable is where the ovum of the woman is combined with the sperm of her husband, and it is placed in her womb. That's it. If she can't bear a child in her womb, then she's patient. Adopt a Muslim child. That's possible too. Adopt that Muslim child. The Prophet ﷺ had said that myself and the orphan are like this on the day of judgment. So find an orphan child and adopt them. But any other combination Islamically is not allowed. It's not acceptable. That child that grows, child of yours that grows in the womb of another woman, she's being nurtured by that woman, by all the things that are connected to it. That child is not really yours anymore. It's not really your child. And if you combine it with the sperm of another man, how is your husband going to claim this is your child, his child? Can't. So it's very clear in this matter, though Prophet Muhammad ﷺ did not speak on it directly. The Sharia has principles which ensure that only one form of IVF, in vitro fertilization, is acceptable from the Sharia perspective. So we need to know our limits. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had said, وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا, that in this way we have made you Muslim females, we have made you a moderate middle nation, not going to one extreme or to another extreme. Just in your practices, righteous in your beliefs. لِتَكُونُوا شُهَدَاءَ عَلَى النَّاسِ, to be a witness to the rest of humankind. Because they're changing, modifying, going up and down, left and right, all over the place. You become the witness for humankind of what a woman should be. What is the proper perspective of a woman in these times, fulfilling her rights and fulfilling her duties. So Allah has made us in that way, so we should stay within the Sharia limits and avoid the extreme views of those who may be Muslims in name and culture, but who don't have any problem with breaking the Sharia. Because as far as they're concerned, Muhammad ﷺ was a male, a patriarch. And as such, he represents a part of the enemy. That's what it has come to. He represents a part of the enemy. And as a result, in Turkey and in Tunisia, they made polygamy illegal. Polygamy was made illegal when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it permissible and the Prophet ﷺ reaffirmed it. They have gone and made it illegal in the country. And they're seeking other laws to ban different Islamic practices with relationship to women. So the West, basically, feminism functions according to the whims of the extreme movement today. There are some among them who are not to those extremes. They do recognize the role of women in family and all this, but they are a minority. The majority now who call themselves feminists are people who are anti-family. They're anti-family. Of course, you have the issue. You're out working, your husband's out working, but you have to come back home and cook the food, wash the dishes, everything else. He comes back home and rests. Well, if your husband is having you work, then he has to share in the housework. If you choose to go out and work, he says, I'm not stopping you, but don't let your going out to work reduce your housework. So you're not taking care of the home. Because it's not necessary for you. I have the means to look after both of us. So it's not necessary. But if you want to, I don't object. However, not at the expense of taking care of the home. Taking care of the children in the home. So that's the arrangement, which can be worked out. And you make that arrangement accordingly. But if he's telling you, no, go on work because I don't have enough to take care of both of us. We need a second income. And this is in many cases like that today in these times. We need that second income. Then okay, if I'm going out to work, you tell him, hey, don't expect me to come home after working, 9 to 5, just like you. And then the first thing I come home, I have to be rushing to the kitchen and cooking this and that. And, no. That's not fair. That's not just, Yes, primarily that is your role, but once the man has required the woman to shift out of her primary role, and her primary role now becomes secondary, her primary role now becomes the earning of income, and the husband is benefiting from it, then he has to make arrangements to have a maid or whatever else in the home to take care of that housework. That's fair. That's just. That's not Western feminist. It is just functional for us to be able to function in a fair way, in a just way. Then that makes sense for us to be able to do that. So again, just closing, because this is really, as I said, only an introduction to this topic. Inshallah, we plan to offer a course in gender studies. Professor Binta from BUK, she has a center, alhamdulillah, there in Kanu, which focused on gender studies. She is going to be working with my university, the Islamic Online University, as well as Professor Zinat Kauthar from the International Islamic University in Malaysia. The two of them are putting together a curriculum for certificate, diploma, and degree courses in gender studies. Because we do need to have women who are thoroughly grounded in this field to be able to speak on behalf of Muslim women. I shouldn't be the one up here speaking. This is your issue, primarily. And I'm sure among you there are those who can express this far more eloquently than I do. I'm just a substitute. But we need to see more and more women step up and take this on and become spokespeople. Because when the West sees this, they say, see, the men, this is a woman's issue and it's men telling the women. No, it needs to be women telling the women. Women discussing with the women. So I encourage you to join the Islamic Online University and access the knowledge that is available, because your future is going to depend on your current knowledge. You need to have a thorough knowledge about the deen, first and foremost. When the Prophet ﷺ had said, Talabul ilmi farida ala kulli Muslim, seeking knowledge is a religious obligation on every Muslim. That's male and female, equally an obligation on both, according to their ability. So this is a responsibility for the sisters of Jannah. For you to achieve that goal of Jannah, you must have correct Islamic knowledge. It is what will guide you with the skills that you already have to be in true service to the Ummah, to truly be sisters of Jannah, to help other sisters get to Jannah, and for you to get to Jannah yourselves. So please, sisters, make that commitment today. It is something which each and every one of you can do. Studying online doesn't require you to stop doing what you're doing and starting something else. Studying online means right at home, while you're doing housework, etc., or even when you're working outside of the home, in your spare time, studying, improving on your knowledge, inshallah, sharing that knowledge, and inshallah, we will have a brighter future for the Muslims, and especially the Muslim sisters of Nigeria in the years to come. Barakallahu feekum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Islamic Online University presents you with the golden opportunity to study the various branches of Islamic studies from the comforts of your home. Now, you get to study at your own time schedule and at a pace that suits you best. IOU is the brainchild of Dr. Bilal Phillips, who envisioned an institution that would offer undergraduate and postgraduate courses online and completely tuition-free.
Choose from the widest range of programs that you can ever imagine. Bachelor's in Islamic Studies, Intensive Arabic Program, Global Quran Memorization Program, Bridge to Master's in Islamic Studies, Bachelor's, Certificate, and Diploma in Psychology, Education, Islamic Finance, Business Administration, and Information Technology. And the crown, Masters in Islamic Studies.
Our syllabus is based on the bachelor's degree program of Madinah University, Durman Islamic University, Al-Azhar University, and other reputable Islamic institutions. Your journey to acquire Islamic knowledge is just a click away. IOU is globally accredited. No traveling required. Save time and money. Study according to your own schedule. Assignments, tests, and exams conducted online to help you ace each course. Audit stream for those who have no time for exams. Textbooks and Islamic resources are completely free. Study under the guidance of highly qualified scholars. Enlighten yourself with the power of knowledge. Get access to live sessions, lectures, audios, and much more. Customize your own study plan and pick anywhere between 2 to 9 courses per semester. If you are looking for something even more flexible, do not despair. We have got you covered. IOU offers a completely free online diploma consisting of more than 35 courses. Say goodbye to time constraints. Join the world's first tuition-free Islamic university with a massively diverse student body from around the world. Islamic Online University. Changing the nation through education. Register now and get started. Visit www.iou.edu.gm for more details.